Hi there, everyone. My name is Max Young, and I'd like to welcome you all on behalf of Vroman's Bookstore to tonight's event. Tonight, we are lucky to have with us Barney Scout Mann, who will be discussing his book, Journeys North. Again, we are so grateful that you can make it tonight and continue to support us throughout, this whole epidemic, and now fires included. This event includes a Q&A portion, so if at any point you want to ask Barney some questions, you can go ahead and click the Ask Question button down there, and we'll go ahead and get to that towards the end of the event. And if you'd like to support Barney as well as our bookstore, you can purchase his book by clicking the green button right here. But with that all out of the way, let me go ahead and introduce him. Barney Scout Mann is an author, lawyer, long-distance hiker, trail advocate, photographer, and PCT historian. His books include The Continental Divide Trail and The Pacific Coast Trail. Mann's photography has been featured on 4 magazine covers, multiple front-page photos in the Oregonian travel section, as well as photos published in the Los Angeles Times, New York Times, Outside, and one photo that is still in every bookstore in the US, which is the inside front cover of the trade paperback edition of Wild. But with that all out of the way, I'll go ahead and let Barney take over. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you. There we go. Now I'm full screen here. Good. And you're stuck with me. You're stuck with me. This is like coming home. I grew up in Culver City, and I actually rode my bicycle to Pasadena. Vroman. So it's wonderful for me to be able to appear here in Vroman. I wish I was up there personally. I wish you were all in the audience, but we'll still have a fun time. And especially for tonight, since it's a hometown bookstore, I want to do some things different. And so I wanted to lead off with different than I've led off any other book talk, and I've done about 7 or 8 so far since August 1st when Journeys North came out. I want to talk about decisions. What have we all been seeing, at least aside from the election coverage, this last week, few days? We've been seeing about fires. California, Sierra Nevada, Oregon, Washington, but in particular in Sierra Nevada, we've seen some very poignant stories, people airlifted out. What was it like? They were planning a 2-week trip, a 5-day trip, and all of a sudden, there is smoke. Maybe they don't even know where it is, where it's coming from, and they have decisions to make. They are often 1, 2, 3 days away from getting out. Are they heading into it or heading away from it? Well, I know what that was like, because my wife and I, Sandy and I, we faced this last long weekend. Our first trip this summer, which usually I would not be saying that in early September, our first backpack trip was in the Sierra Nevada, eastern Sierra Nevada. We were going back to a spot which we think is the best camping spot in the entire Sierra Nevada, which is like taking a handful of diamonds and saying, this one here is the best, really, up there. Evolution Valley, in particular McClure Meadow in the middle of Evolution Valley. Just stunning, stunning country. We were going with my wife's brother, and he says, it's 50 years. I've dreamed about going there since I was a Boy Scout, which also dates me. I'm a very happy 68-year-old right now. The first 2.5 days, we started Thursday, Friday, Saturday. We're just wonderful, pristine skies, got great photos. And then middle of the day on Saturday, and we are now reached the middle of Evolution Valley. We had a long, languid break alongside some waterfalls, got some great photos. And then we had an even longer 1.5-hour bunch, which is long for me. Even took a nap at the end of it at McClure Meadow. And as we're hiking away, we see off in the distance to the west of us a very unusual cloud. Looked at first, oh, that's thunderhead. But I haven't seen any big thunderheads the last few days. That's strange. And it got larger and larger and looked stranger and stranger. And it's actually something called a I've forgotten how to pronounce it. Pyrocumulonimbus. And if you heard the voice, that's my wife. She'll actually hop in here, but later. And if you hear this voice that is keeping me on the straight and narrow or just jumping in, that's her. Named Sandy, or in the trail, her name is Frodo. But we saw this cloud. It's really strange. And very quickly, we realized this is wrong, and what's feeding it and what's underneath it, because we could see the darker plume, fat plume leading into it. This is a fire. How far away is it? Is this going to impact us? That night, we were camping at a campsite I've looked forward to getting back to for almost a dozen years. alongside Evolution Lake at the lip. We're at a 1,000-foot cliff, and we're looking out over the valley. And the sun sets about 20 and smoke and ash. Sunday night. It's the worst smoke and ash I've been in out in the woods. I knew what time the moon rose that night, and it didn't rise. There were no stars in the sky. There was no indication that the moon was even up at all. And in fact, when I woke up about 1 o'clock that night, I was really happy to see a very faint blood red moon. Yeah, and we came out. But the decisions people had to make. We met on Saturday, just after we first saw the plume and knew it was a fire. A young couple, Aaron and Mindy, and they're in the middle of this almost 3-week long John Muir Trail hike. Long-time dream of theirs. They're halfway through, and I still have no idea. I don't know what they decided. So what does this look like? Now, if I've done this right, I'm going to screen share, and I will show you what I've been talking about. Yeah, screen share, application window. I'll talk you through it. So if you want to do it, you'll know now too. And I push the blue share and go down here and make it a large. Oh no. There we go. Okay, we did it. This was the morning before we saw the cloud. That's we're 900 feet up almost not quite a cliff face, but a really fast climb face. And there's the stream that feeds Evolution Valley. And we love this photo. The sun was coming out to clean, pristine skies. And then this is what we saw after lunch, folks. There's I'll let her say the word again.
The pyrocumulonimbus cloud.
Thank you. My wife was a high school science teacher, biology. So if she speaks to me with her high school science teacher voice, watch out. Yeah. And then this was that evening. There it is. Yeah. The sun is about to set, far off the horizon. We are at almost 11,000 feet. And it would only get worse from here. All right, so let's stop the screen sharing. Yeah. Decisions. I wanted to use it to lead in to read an excerpt they haven't read before in any of these. And the excerpt was the decision we faced at the very end. In extreme northern Washington, there was a 45-mile stretch that people have been talking about, not just all during the trail, but hikers have been talking about beforehand, worrying about it. Especially the core of the concern, the monster in the bed, was something called the Suiata River. 2003, there have been 1,000-year floods. Literally, it had wiped out every bridge up there. Over the Suiata River, there had been a bridge you could take the U.S. cavalry 2 abreast and march them across this bridge. Huge steel girders. The planks were, I think, 4 inches thick or more. This thing was built to last lifetime or more. The flood came through, and it actually blew it downstream, knocked it off its moorings in this 150-foot long bridge. Steel girders and all was blown downstream. And so the Forest Service had issued they hadn't issued a closure, they'd issued an advisory, a real strong advisory. Take a detour, which wasn't pleasant. There were actually a couple detours, none of which were fun. And a few of us, our year in 2007, 4 years later, we're starting to go through the old route. And here's the excerpt. We are, at this point, we're just over 100 miles from Canada. Here we go. And one other thing, trail names. So my parents named me Bernard, or actually in the birth certificate it says Bernard. They called me Barney. But to thousands of people, not 10,000s of people, I'm simply known by my trail name, Scout. My wife, Sandy, is Frodo. And you'll hear some other trail names in this and in a couple other experts will read to us. Here it goes. In the dim, early morning light, Dalton hiked alone until he saw a tilted signpost emerge from a chill fog. He had reached Indian Pass. There were 2 aged trail signs, one for the PCT and one for Indian Creek. On the post, the Forest Service had thumbtacked 2 notes. Please take the detour, implored one. The please was underlined 3 times. The second described an ongoing search and rescue mission for a missing PCT hiker, not many miles before the Suiata River. Standing alone in the wilderness, Dalton had to decide. He hadn't planned to be here by himself. The night before, he'd stayed awake into the wee hours, hoping Blazer would arrive. That morning, he'd drawn out his normal packing routine. He kept looking up, wishing Blazer would catch up to him, but she hadn't, and he pressed on. I only hope she's hiking with others. He had been stressing about this section for weeks. While he knew there were trail washouts and intimidating river crossings and hundreds of blowdowns, Dalton fought the urge to prove that he was strong, capable, and worth a damn. That was both a strength and a weakness on the PCT. He had heard that a few hikers had successfully navigated the old PCT route, and after so many miles, the drive to stay on the official trail ran strong. But the deciding factor for him was his need to prove to himself, I am a courageous person. North on the PCT or east along Indian Creek. As the fog changed to drizzle, Dalton headed out north, bound for the Suyato. 4 hours later, Frodo, Blazer, and I reached the same spot. The fog lifted and was now hovering 100 feet above our heads. We saw the warning notes. Please take the detour. We did the opposite. After 2,500 miles hiking, we made our own decisions. The Forest Service hadn't officially closed the trail, and at Stevens Pass, we'd spoken to someone who'd hiked the old route southbound, so our decision wasn't totally foolhardy. But the magnitude of the choice to head north on an unmaintained trail started sinking in as we began tallying the blowdowns. Stepovers didn't count. A blowdown had to significantly interfere with our pace. Often we veered yards left or right, scrambled through broken limbs and brush, or passed our packs over a tree trunk, rock, or other obstacle. It chewed up time, tried our patience, and sometimes led to taking a dicey shortcut. As dusk approached, Blaze looked up one gorge and spied a 20-foot log bridge wedged sideways between bus-sized rocks. Why's a bridge up there? Then she realized, upslope, we'd recently forded a stream. That bridge had spanned the stream before the 2003 flood. At nightfall, when we made camp, the blowdown tally had reached 62. Our group of 3 had expanded to 8. Of the newcomers, Blazer was especially happy to see Nadamus. They'd last parted in Ashland 6 weeks ago. As for the other 4, 3 were close to Blazer's age, young. Chigger, Miso, Mr. Pink. Mr. Pink was Miso's boyfriend from the trail, and Miso would answer to any tofu, or for that matter, any soy product. The 8th and last was Lotto, who was new to us. We counted the 100th blowdown the next morning, leaving a trail note to designate it as such. But it wasn't the most memorable blowdown. Neither was number 200 or 300, nor was the blowdown that dwarfed Frodo, an ancient western red cedar with a 25-foot circumference. What a sound that forest giant must have made when it crashed. The most memorable blowdown wasn't nearly that large. The trail had been crab walking sideways across a steep angled slope, and this blowdown was a 10-foot-long, chest-high broken stub lying across the trail, its rotted top hanging out over a cliff like a slide into oblivion. One slip and you're airborne, launched off the mountainside, I thought. With chilled fingers, I clawed into slimy, partially rotted wood as I clambered over first and then reached back to help Chigger. Blazer came next, but she waved me off. "You've got this, Blazer," I said as I started to turn. She placed one foot on the top. As she lifted her other foot off the ground, her foot on the log slipped. Her body hit the slick wood and her feet shot out over the edge as my hand flew out to grab her, my fist quickly closing around her wrist. Blazer's weight hit me with a jerk and my arm tensed like a steel rod. Chigger's chin dropped as she watched me start to slide toward Blazer. I dug in my feet and leaned back, my heels searching for traction. My other arm flailed behind me for something to hold on to, but found only air. The quick intake of our breaths was drowned by the roar, far below, of a cascade river tumbling boulders like a child's marbles. Then I regained my balance and my grip held. Blazer's legs hovered over air as we looked at one another. When she finally was able to walk again, her knees trembled. I nearly went over, she thought. The second day after Indian Pass, we reached the Suyato. Once a channel, the stream bed was now a wide, narrow rock-strewn floodplain. Trail ducks, a trail marker of 3 rocks stacked one on top of each other, led us to the log. 2 foot thick and 6 feet above the water, the trunk spanned 40-foot wide rapids. I went first, unbuckling my hip belt to lower my center of gravity and to make sure I could wiggle the pack off my back if I fell in. I walked across upright, but just past halfway, I thought, this is really stupid. Nevertheless, I pressed on, hard in my throat. Next, Chigger scooted slowly along the length of the log, lifting her rear and inching forward time and time again. Frodo, my wife, followed. It took 60 to 70 scoots to cross. Then Lotto stepped out. He looked like he might walk across, but after 3 steps, he retreated and then scooted across too. Blazer hadn't seen any of this. Over the roar, we hollered out, "Scoot across!" and pantomimed the motion. She nodded in acknowledgement, but then stepped confidently out onto the log. We held our collective breath as she moved, her hiking bowls marking time in front of her. I'd never seen her concentrate more fiercely. The exhale of breath was palpable when she reached the other side. 426 blowdowns. That was the final tally when the detour track rejoined the PCT, 7 miles past the Seattle. We were so pleased to be back on the maintained official trail we could have kissed the ground. 20 miles of tread now lay between us and Stehekin. For most, it was the final resupply stop before the end. With 100 miles and 5 hiking days left, we are on track to meet Frodo's itinerary end date, October 2nd, her birthday. Yeah. So let me screen share, because it's one thing to hear me read it. Yeah. And here, bring it up big. Here is that western red cedar blowdown. It's about 70 feet tall, and if you do the math, it's 22 to 25 feet around in circumference. And then if the PowerPoint gods are with us, we next have a video of Frodo scooching across the Seattle. Here it is, folks. Yeah. Yeah. We were all very glad to have that behind us. So how did I get there? How did I get here? When did I start backpacking? I was always the smallest kid in my class growing up. And that was hard, especially for a boy. You get picked last in gym or third to last, and that's no fun. So I always had to work really hard not to get picked on. But the first time I went out backpacking, or really backpacking, week-long trip in the Sierra Nevada, I didn't even weigh 80 pounds. I had a pack that weighed almost half my weight. But out there, as long as I kept up, I was the same as the big boys. I liked that. I liked it a lot. And out there, I saw things that I'd only seen on TV screens or I saw in adventure movies. Out there, I could see a beaver slap in the water, hear the sound and be there. A bear could be around the next bend. And that was amazing. I fell in love with it out there. It was hard, but I fell in love with it. And I was lucky I did. Because 10 years later, I met my wife. And as she likes to say,
I wouldn't have married you if you hadn't been a backpacker.
Yeah, so I'm real lucky. I'm real lucky. For our the summer we got married, the gift we asked from our family was, would you go on a 10-day backpack with us? And a good number of them did. I doubt that most people have that on their wedding registry list. You know, you go to whatever store you have, wedding registry list. There it is, 10-day backpack with the bride and groom. No. When we first started having kids, we took them out. Our son, and I think he's on tonight. Hello, Sean. I'll embarrass you because even at age 68, I can still embarrass my kids a little bit. When he and his wife got married, their honeymoon was to do the John Muir Trail, 211 miles. And my wife and I, we crashed their honeymoon, and they were happy about it because we brought in their next resupply. 2003. By then, we'd already been thinking and starting to dream about doing the entire Pacific Crest Trail, 2,650 miles. That's a lot of miles. It's miles enough. Well, I've had every once in a while when someone asks me, why did you do it? That I'll go like this. I said, this is the reason why. And the reason why I see this distance here, I can go up to a globe in a library or in a school, and I can look at that globe and say, I walked from here to here. And that's pretty cool. That's how long 2,650 miles is. But we did the John Muir Trail, 211 miles in 2003. And we came off it still really, really wanting to do the PCT. So with that sort of background story, I'll grab the screen again and I'll show you a few photos to say, yeah, it actually did happen that way. Scout was right. So we'll screen share and do the application window and share. There we go. Okay. Who's that? It's not my son. That's me. The year is 1965. Year's 1965. Every shred of clothing I'm wearing on is cotton. That backpack is a cotton duck, aluminum frame. That whistle was actually my grandfather's whistle. He was an assistant scoutmaster, and I'm carrying it. Yeah, and that's the young man who fell in love with backpacking. And here are two very young people. That guy with the brown hair and a decent amount of it is me. And that's my bride standing next to me. Yeah. And then this is us in 2007. This is what the starting point of the Pacific Crest Trail looks like. There are 5 fir pillars behind us. Little bit of barbed wire, which is all that used to be there until early 2000s. And then the border fence. Many hikers will cross, go around the barbed wire, and they'll stick their hand under the fence, hoping to touch Mexico, and hopefully they're not going to have a rattlesnake on the other side. Yeah. Oh, I got to go back first. Okay, our son Sean knows what it is. This was our 30th wedding anniversary summer. And actually, I haven't shared this video before, so this is for you there, all of you there at Vroman's. It was our 30th wedding anniversary summer. And the day of our 30th wedding anniversary actually happened to be the day we were cresting the highest point in the PCT, Forester Pass, 1,300 and
13,000.
13,000. Thank you, 13,180 feet. You'll see it in the little sign there. And I turned to Sean, our son, who was hiking with us for that 4 or 5 days, and asked him if he'd do a remarriage ceremony at the top. We'd renew our vows. And after he got the 25-year-old person's deer in the headlights look off his face, he said, okay, sure. So we're at the top. It's not very a large area. And we renewed our vows. And I added, I'm looking over the sides, I'm looking at her right now. And I added one to the original vows. And she's chuckling. Because in addition to the usual to love and so forth, and be there when they're sick and when you're not, I also added one. And that one was to amuse her. Yeah, which I try and do. So we also did something we did at our wedding, and that was dance a polka together. So you're about to see maybe the only polka that's been danced at Forester Pass, 13,180 feet. So here we go. And that's Sean singing. Don't worry, it doesn't go on long, folks. And there we go. Yeah. If we were all together, you'd be clapping right now, but I can't even see you. There
I don't know about that.
And you saw those folks at the very beginning, right? The two of us in clean clothes. Clothes were never clean again. This is us 5 months and 5 days later when we reached the international boundary at the end of the Pacific Crest Trail. You can see me over at in the blue jacket and Frodo just below me. There's Blazer in the green jacket. Dalton sitting with his beard that he worked very hard on to grow, and that's Chigger in the black jacket next to Dalton. Yeah. So before I go back to the screen, this is what the trail looks like. It does not go in a straight line. If it went in a straight line, it would literally be 1,100 miles, 1,100 miles. That's what Interstate 5 does from the Mexican border up to Canada. But as you can see, it veers here and there and everywhere. It does stick along the crest. And Max, I know you're listening, and all of you, if you remember one thing after this, the trail we hiked was not the Pacific Coast Trail. That's a trail all our friends and relatives think that we hiked. It's actually the Pacific Crest Trail. So don't feel bad. I had a TV interview the other day, and that's what this woman led off with. So here we are with Barney Scoutman, and he's telling you about his new book, Journeys North, hiking the Pacific Coast Trail. I thought, oh my God, am I going to have to correct her or not? And how can I do it so nicely? But when she said it the second time, I had to sneak in. This next photo is not for the meek. At the midpoint, I thought we really needed to do something, maybe something a little crazy. We needed to honor it. And so I decided, I didn't tell her, I decided we ought to shave our heads. And I surprised her. A friend hiked in with shaving equipment, and she did it. Frodo did it. And so here you are, folks, ready. Yeah, there's the two of us with shaved heads. I thought she's still absolutely beautiful. And people said I looked like Gandalf or just a big elf. And they were
A leprechaun.
Oh, leprechaun. There we go. So I'm going to stop sharing at that point right now. We'll go away and we'll go back to it. There we go. So I hope you enjoyed those photos. Yeah. Yeah. One more thing. My wife and I do something a bit crazy. We host hikers at our house. We live in San Diego. The trailhead's 60 miles inland. It's hard to get to. We started doing it the year before that the year before we hiked. We had 17 people. We thought, wow, this would be a great way to touch the trail, build our own enthusiasm, follow some people up the trail. And it was. But it got bigger and bigger. You've probably heard about the book Wild and the movie Wild. Well, the number of people starting the Pacific Crest Trail to through hike just skyrocketed. In 2007, our year, there may be 300 people, maybe, who started with the intention to through hike. Maybe 90 or 100 finished the year. In 2019, somewhere north of 3,000 started. And folks, over 8 weeks, 1,200 of them stayed at our house. Yeah, us and 81 volunteers who helped us out. One of the reasons why we did it is, as you'll read in Journeys North, so many times we're out there, all we have is on our back. Doesn't matter whether we're rich or poor. Oftentimes we're real needy. You're trying to hitch into a town. That's the only way to get in. So we had so many times, we had random strangers perform acts of kindness to it. And so for us to give back is a wonder. And let me show you a photo of what that looks like. It's one thing to say we had 1,200 people, but what that means is 30 to 40 every night. And there we go. And we'll get you off this photo and go to the next. So Frodo, what do all these people have in common?
They all spent the night at our house the previous night.
All those folks slept at our house in the backyard and bedrooms, the tent trailer. 2 of them slept in our treehouse. All these folks, look at those faces. They are all starting a journey a lifetime. All of them have set aside their life, likely for 5 months. Some of them have sold their cars, put all their worldly goods in storage. Many have quit their jobs. Yeah, that's what it looks like. That's what it looks like. Yeah. So why did I write Journeys North? Why did I write the book? One reason is it's the stories I came into. So our hike is 13 years ago. And I'm 68 years old, as I told you. And yet 13 years ago, we were out there for 155 days. I can recall a story for each and every day. In fact, I can recall multiple stories. I could probably sit here if after it's all over, if we went out to eat for dinner afterwards, you could probably pick a day and Frodo and I could sit there and just reel off stories. We imprint differently out there. Even when you go outside and just walk out your door and take a walk to the park, it's different once you're outdoors. You feel things different, you react differently. And when you're out in the wilderness, which we were for almost the entire time out there, you imprint differently. Yeah. So this is a day at which I could talk your ear off of. And this is actually the introduction. I can't tell you how many times I wrote and rewrote the introduction. But this is on Frodo's birthday. This is the day our itinerary that she wrote out said we were going to finish. It's October 2nd. Yeah. Frodo's birthday, my wife's birthday. Tuesday, October 2nd, 2007. Blazer couldn't feel her toes. In the pre-dawn gloom, the 25-year-old stomped a path over a foot of fresh snow, but the effort barely blunted the cold. This was the second blizzard in 3 days as the Gulf of Alaska hurled once-in-a-generation storms at Washington's Cascade Range. After 5 months hiking the Pacific Crest Trail, Blazer was wearing her 5th pair of running shoes, and the studded soles were ground flat, much like her muscles, sinews, and joints. She'd come over 2,600 miles, only 40 left to reach Canada. She'd sworn days before, I'll crawl if I have to. Right behind her, Frodo and I brushed fat snowflakes from our bent shoulders and packs. A dim light penetrated the pine and spruce thicket. Happy birthday, Frodo, Blazer piped up. We jerked, as if poked. In the 30 years we'd been married, I'd never forgotten Frodo's birthday. But this time, focused on the cold, and not getting lost and on surviving, we both had. What do you want for your birthday? Blazer asked. Frodo, her breath visible, didn't hesitate. I want to finish the day alive. 2 more storms swept in over the next 3 days, smothering the Pacific Crest Trail in thigh-high drifts. On Thursday night, Seattle King 5 TV News reported 3 Pacific Crest Trail hikers are missing. Chatter lit up the internet within minutes. Goodness, it's so cold now. May the Lord protect them. Past midnight, one of 60 soon-to-be rescuers wrote, I am headed out to Stevens Pass to work the search. But they weren't searching for us. They were searching for Nadine. Yeah. Let me introduce Frodo. She's going to join me now, and then I'll show a couple pictures. Folks, this is what 43 years married looks like, and I'm so glad she's still smiling at me.
Yeah, he was supposed to call me in about 10 minutes ago.
Oh God. Yeah. I'm a lucky man. I get to go to bed with the with my soulmate every night. Is that okay to say?
Yes.
Okay, I'll embarrass her even worse. Yeah, she still takes my breath away. I love it. I'm really lucky.
Okay, we're here to talk about the book.
Okay, we're here to talk about the book. Yeah. So actually, I think your next line is talking about the people.
Ah, okay. I couldn't tell because we weren't quite following the script.
This is all special for you at Vroman's.
So I'm not sure whether Scout actually came right out and said it, but this is not your typical trail memoir where it's like a trail journal. This is actually more of an ensemble piece where it's about us, but it's about 4 other hikers much younger than us. So it's a little different than most of the typical PCT books that have come out. Anyway, when we started our hike, I thought it was going to be about the scenery. I thought it was going to be about the physical challenge and meeting that challenge. And I was just totally wrong. It was really all about the people. It was about the community that we formed. It was about the people that we got to know. And it was really a wonderful experience, but a surprise to me that was so important. Are you reading another excerpt now?
I thought so.
Do you have that enough time?
That's a good question.
You have more than enough time. Don't worry about it.
Okay, great. Great.
Disembodied voice comes out.
I like that. There we go. Okay, there's the expert I wanted. Yeah. I'd actually, earlier I peeked on to see who's attending. So I'd like to give a shout out to one other person. I hope I won't embarrass her. But it's actually and I hope it's okay with my wife too, because I'm giving a shout out to my first long-term girlfriend. I see that.
Is Nina on?
Yeah, I see that Nina's on.
Hi, Nina.
Nina and I went on a 1972, went on a 7-day backpack. It's the last backpack I went on where we cooked entirely by fire, which is not trivial. It was before the first backpacking craze when we all switched over to stoves, so it wouldn't have as much impact in the outdoors. And I know her mother wasn't happy about that, her boyfriend taking her out in the outdoors. So I really appreciate that that she came to me, and I still have good memories from the time. So back to the excerpt. I'm having too much fun. It's all good. So this is about people. It's so much people's story. This is a few nights before the introduction. 2 nights before. It's the first time we got pushed back by the snow. Because introduction, it's the second time we're heading out because we really want to get there. This is before we head out the second time. Blazer holed up in her room, two doors down from us. She was subdued, still feeling shell-shocked. When she'd arrived, the first thing she did was trim and clean her nails. Habit runs deep, and she'd give her hands what care she could, even if she couldn't protect them from the cold. Next up was a blessedly warm shower, but it wasn't the usual comforting balm. Soaping up, she couldn't shake an unsettled feeling. Suddenly thrust from extreme cold to civilized luxury, she knew she might be thrust right back again. The unease penetrated her bones, just like the bone-deep cold on Cutthroat Pass. Blazer could feel it. Everyone was gearing up to hike out tomorrow. She answered a sharp rap on her door. Frodo was there, short, stern, and intimidating.
Yeah, right.
Short, stern, and intimidating. Come on, you're coming with me. The conversation was crisp. Where are we going? Across the street, Frodo said. What are we doing? I'm buying you a jacket, gloves, and waterproof socks. Blazer stammered no. She resisted, rooted to her spot inside the door frame. I'm a burden again, she thought. I've been bailed out too many times. No more. Not this close to the end. Frodo looked up at the tall young woman and crossed her arms. I don't want to hear an argument. You're coming. What was Blazer to do? Her trail mom had spoken. Yes, ma'am. At Winthrop Mountain Sports, Blazer steered them toward the least expensive jackets. No, try this one, said Frodo. What color do you want? And that's what broke Blazer's shield. I get to pick the color. I'm getting something new. Inside her still was the 5-year-old girl who'd stared up at her mother paying with food stamps. Blazer burst out with a smile. Soon after, she walked out of Rita's, clutching her new clothes in a bag. That night, we devoured pizza at a long table at the Riverside Grill. Our number had increased from 10 to 11. 2 of us, a couple, 1 pair of friends, and 7, like Blazer and Dalton, who'd largely hiked on their own. For 2,600 miles, we'd made our own decisions. Dalton said it best. We'd all become fiercely independent. We'd also absorbed the latest information. Rita's weather forecast was bleak. We couldn't wait it out. It also wouldn't help to rail against the unheard of early snowstorms. We had a short window now to try to finish the PCT, or no chance at all. From Rainy Pass, we had 61 miles to Canada and 8 more to Manning Park. 3 days and 2 nights, that's all. Our last bailout point was halfway at Hart's Pass. All of this begged the question, would we, die-hard economists all, work as a group? We laid down parameters. We stay together. We have a designated front and rear who always stay inside of each other. But what about peeing and pooping? Chigger popped off an answer. I expect everyone to find something interesting and look the other way. We talked on. The best navigator, Disco Dan, he'd stay right near the front, next to Frodo and the maps. We spoke of what can happen in the cold, not eating or drinking enough, hiding that you're hurting. For my scouting experience offered, we should have an old-fashioned buddy system. Each person keeps a close eye on the other. If they're not peeing, make them drink. If they're not eating, get out an energy bar. Watch closely. You need to know if the other is in pain. When was the moment? When did we cast in our lot? There never was a vote. Blazer sat there and just tried to absorb it all. This was completely outside her skill set, but she did sense, her ears perking up the moment the group coalesced. It was Chigger who said, let's hear it for Team Snowplow. We had a name. We'd hike as one. Yeah. I'm going to screen share 3 more photos. Okay. This was 2 nights before Frodo's birthday, the first night it started snowing. Yeah. This was the morning before Blazer was in the shower. That's Blazer. I'm not sure why she's smiling other than the camera's pointing out here. You can see the other folks, Chuckwagon and Guts, looking more appropriate, and their beards are frozen.
You also can't tell, but Blazer's jacket zipper is broken, and she's lost a glove.
Yeah. And this is the day before Frodo's birthday. It's the one time it was safe enough for me to take out a camera and get a picture. She is hiking in trail runners, not snow boots. Yeah, that's what it was like out there. That's what it's like out there. Yeah. And I'm not going to tell you the rest of the ending.
But you did a spoiler. You showed the international border.
Well, I said he made it. I didn't say how, and I didn't say who had made it.
That's true.
That's true. That's true. So one thing I want you to know is to get the feeling of being out there. You don't need to go out for 5 months. You don't need to go out for a week. You don't need to go out for 3 days or even overnight. Just physically getting outside and walking. You can have some of the same feelings we had out there. What's the most celebrated event in our lives? And none of us remember it. It's when they call out, she's walking, he's walking. I think even more celebrated than when we say our first words. And why? It's one of, if not the most natural thing we do. And when we walk through country, when we walk through land, I once walked from my house, I'm in San Diego, once from my house downtown, 14 miles to work. I got up early at 4 o'clock. forever afterwards, I felt differently about that land. We feel differently about land we walk. And even if tomorrow, if you were to go out and walk from your house to the park, you're open in a different way. You're disconnected, likely, and you might be wearing your headphones, I don't know. But you're largely disconnected from so many things that tug at us constantly. Huh? I had someone who, after one of my talks, sent me an email next day and say, Scout, I went out and I walked to the park the next day. I've lived in this neighborhood for 20 years. I ran into 2 neighbors I'd never had a talk with, and we had a delightful chat. I got to know them. We're open in different ways. I did not shelter in place here in San Diego, and we did not have hikers in our house this year. We had over 1,200 signed up to stay with us. And on March 15th, we made the hard decision, as we had to cancel our hiker season. It was really tough. It really was. But 4 days later, our middle child, daughter in Washington, D.C., who was given us, well, then 1, but she was 8 months pregnant with our second grandchild. She and her husband, these are strong people. They called out help. We could use some help. Daycare's been canceled. And so we flew on a deserted Southwest jet, and we sheltered in place for 3 months in north of Washington, D.C. Every day I took our 2-year-old out for a walk. He wasn't that happy about it at first. What? Walk? Walk a third of a mile the end of the block and back? We'd spend an hour. But we walked from landmark to landmark. We had the first fire hydrant, which became our second favorite hydrant. And the fire hydrant after that. There was neighbors who, their front yard had garden gnomes, and we would switch them around every morning. And then the neighbors started switching them back. We watched flowers grow and fade. One neighbor planted arugula, and we'd sit down this 2-year-old every day, because every day it gets a little bit bigger, especially back there. It rains a lot, unlike out here. And every day we'd sit down next to the arugula, and Cormac would look at me and say, Zeta. He knows me as Zeta. It's Yiddish for grandpa. He'd say, Zeta, talk arugula, talk arugula. I carried sidewalk chalk, and I don't draw with beans. I draw tank trucks. I do an okay tank truck. I draw a steam engine. And Cormac and I made friends. In front of one house, there's a big oak tree, and they had a broken down swing. And one day, the man outside, the man outside said, "You ought to swing on a swing." And then he realized it wasn't working well. The next day, he's out there. He's older than me. He's out there in a 25-foot tall ladder, and he's screwing in bolts into the tree, and he's erecting a new swing. 90 days later, when we finished, Cormac and I had a whole community. I even made a map. I'll show you a couple pictures from it now before we go fairly quickly into a Q&A here. So once again, I'll screen share. Application window. And okay, screen share. Yeah. There I'm in the backyard, and I'm going to tear up. That's me with my first grandson. And does this scene remind you of any famous literary characters? One named Christopher, and the other named Winnie the Pooh. Isn't that adorable? If I say so myself. And here's the map I made. This was the neighborhood. Cormac and Zeta's walk. Yeah, I can see our first favorite fire hydrant, our second favorite fire hydrant, where the gnomes are. We had our favorite manhole cover. Every day we'd sit on it. And if there was water in the gaps, he'd want to play with it or put in dirt. And we had this little friend, Annie's house. There was Mosey the cat, this cat that owned the neighborhood. The plastic owl. Every day he would want to walk up the driveway and see the plastic owl, and he'd say, as you probably know, he'd say, "Talk owl, Zeta." We did, yeah. And with that, I'm going to stop screen sharing and go back to the two of us. This is my it's my third book, but this is the book I always wanted to write for 40 years. That is it's nonfiction, but it's what they call narrative nonfiction. It's written like a novel. And what I'm leading up to is I'm going to read an endorsement or what a reader sent that really just tickled my fancy. So I'll be looking off screen for a second. I'm not sure why this one did, but he wrote me, "Took your book with me when I went to buy a car." I know this one doesn't start out well, does it? "Took your book with me when I went to buy a car. It'd be something to read while I was waiting." And then he goes on, "Then I stayed up until 1 a.m. to finish it. I enjoyed every minute. I was also happy it wasn't me." Excellent adventure. And I have one other endorser, so I'll show you a picture of, and then we'll get into our time left for Q&A.
Okay, you're not going to read that one?
Why don't you read that?
I'll read it. Journeys North is fascinating and heart-wrenching and uplifting all at the same time. I'm an avid reader, but seldom have I found myself this drawn into a story.
Yeah. So actually,
It
before
was all the editing, I think.
that's right. This is my first reader, my first editor. They say two things about authors. One, every author's to be an author's spouse is to be immortal, which is good and
Sometimes bad.
and embarrassing. They also say that every author has their first reader, the reader they have sit on their shoulders, and that author was always Frodo. I hope to make her laugh, make her cry, and if I do for all of you guys, it's a bonus. It's a bonus. I want to give a shout out to Vromans and independent bookstores, folks. Independent bookstores mean so much. They're the heart of communities. And if we don't support them, you on there, who will? You're on here tonight. So my hope is you'll buy Journeys North. You'll press the green button that is right there. But at least when you get off, go online and buy something from them. They need our support. They all do. I'd like to thank Max Young before we get into the Q&A. And here I'll end with a photo of one of my supporters with his head buried in the book. Some of you, especially those of you who have grandkids, already know where this one is heading, right? Oops. There we go. Okay. Let's see if it's the next one. Yeah, there he is. There's our grandson. They don't let me show his face, but they okayed to let me show this picture. There we go.
He's actually really cute.
Yeah, we do say so ourselves. We're proud grandparents. And since I've shown his picture twice, I don't have to turn in my grandfather's license. So with that, I've really enjoyed, and here I'm giving Max a cue that it's time for some Q&A. So let's go for it, Max.
Yeah, so we have about 3 questions. So I'll go ahead and throw the first one at you, which is, what is your favorite part of being in this culture of hiking and backpacking?
I thought I heard Frodo. What's your favorite part?
No, I didn't hear that.
Well, why don't you answer first? Yeah.
Okay. So I'm just going to reiterate, it's the community, it's the people, it's the fact that actually Scout has this phrase that I think really hits the nail on the head. He says, this is the community of people I always wanted to belong to and never knew existed, because we're our best selves out there. When you come upon someone else who's a hiker out in the backcountry, you know that if you needed it, they would give you the shirt off their back, and vice versa. We all look out for each other, and we truly are our best selves. And one of the things that allowed Scout to write this book is that a lot of people share out there in different ways than they do in real life or in the rest of life. So that's why he collected so many stories and so many backstories of people along the trail.
If you want to get to know a friend better, go on a walk with them. Go on a walk with them. Out there, it wasn't usually, I could have a conversation almost every day that I wouldn't have with a best friend once a year out there. We're more open, our nerve endings are open, and we talk to each other differently under an open sky. Yeah. We went to borrow a minivan for a summer once from a hiker friend. And this is someone we'd only hike with for on and off for a couple days. But the bonds there are so tight that when we asked to rent it from her in the summer, she said, I don't want to hear that word again. Don't say that word. I knew the word.
This was actually a mini RV.
Yeah.
That I ended up driving while Scout was hiking the Continental Divide Trail.
Yeah. And on this borrowed, non-rented RV, we put 14,000 miles, got it stuck in the mud. And what did our friends say about this? Is, the road trek, that's what it was, the road trek. The road trek needs to have a trail name. Yeah, it had earned it. And so she gave it a trail name. Next question. Go ahead, Max.
I love that. The next question is, how did Sleuth get her trail name?
How did who?
Sleuth?
Oh, Sleuth.
Sleuth.
Oh, she must be listening.
Oh, Sleuth. Oh, this is great. We're hiking on the Pacific Crest Trail. It's about 150, 160 miles long in the desert, and I run across, say, a hiker, and I think within 2 minutes we have each sniffed out that we're lawyers. What is it about lawyers? Give me a break. I knew she was a lawyer. Rachel Ginsburg was her name. And right there on the spot, we created the Pacific Crest Trail Lawyers Association, Bar Association. I forget which was elected president and vice president. But that afternoon in a conversation, I was writing a trail journal. She was following along. Left and back, and I am leading up to how she got her trail name. I am, And I gather she was reading along.
So she was a section hiker.
Yeah, she's hiking the PCT in large pieces, large respectable pieces. And we come to a pass in the northern Sierra Nevada. And as we're walking off, it's like a lane and a half road. It's a small pass, Ebbets Pass, if I remember. Highway 4, if I remember correctly. And there's a note that says Trail Magic on the other side of the road. Oh, this is way cool. Trail Magic is where someone is maybe set up a small feed. Trail Magic could be giving a hitch in the town. In this case,
cold soda.
And apparently someone had set up a barbecue. They were having hot dogs and cold drinks, and
it was directed to you.
And it was Rachel Ginsburg. It was targeted. She was doing this for a lot of people, but she was doing because she followed our trail journal, and here we were.
And our trail journal was not terribly up to date, so she had to be smart to figure out when we would get
smart lucky. So having done this, I thought this woman deserves a trail name. And I was thinking about, and actually I didn't come up with the great name. It was a woman named Glacier who said, after I described what the feeling I was trying to do, she said, because I was looking for something like Sherlock Holmes or something like that. She said, she's Sleuth. And Sleuth she was. Hello, Sleuth. Good to have you on. Good question.
Yeah, I was like, I probably should have let you know beforehand that it was her that asked the question.
We guessed. See, we're smart too. We have a PhD and a lawyer.
We have one more question. And the question is, what advice would you have for anyone who wants to start out hiking and backpacking? What was one of the biggest things you learned starting off?
So when you first go backpacking, you need to go with other people, ideally. We get hikers who come here and stay with us who have never slept overnight, and they've never hiked more than a couple miles. And I think that's so foolhardy. Some of them get it figured out. They do great. But it's a good idea to try this out beforehand. And when you first go backpacking, go with someone who knows what they're doing and tell them, Scout and Frodo said, you need to make sure I have a good time.
Quote, unquote.
Yes.
It's your job.
Right. And we've had that approach with our kids. So you don't want to start out with, something really grueling like we did this last weekend, the 5 days. You want to start out with something a little easier. You want to make sure you have nice food, that you're not too cold, that you've got the right gear. So talk to someone who really knows what they're doing and kind of get it figured out beforehand.
So if you don't know someone, Sierra Club, almost every area, Sierra Club, they're running beginning backpacking classes. There are people almost as crazy as us. I mean, they're really enthused about what they're doing, and it's nice to be around infectiously enthused people at this. That's why we started hosting hikers the year before, is we thought this will feed our enthusiasm, because so much of out there, it's a mental game. Because I'll be honest with you, hiking any distance with stuff on your back, there's also some pain involved too. So you want to make sure that you've heightened the pleasurable side, that whether you're taking along good food, and that's not beer in a glass bottle or a fifth of something, but you can eat really well out there. With each of our kids, they went on the first hike under their own power at age 4. I mean, they're actually walking. We take them on our back before that.
And they would get to be the snack monitor with the fanny pack and lifesavers.
So if someone's taking you on the first hike, tell them, make me snack monitor. Right? Yeah. Read up on this before. That's a way to whet your appetite. Read books such as mine, Journeys North. It'll whet your appetite, because it's really wonderful out there, but you have to want to do it. And one of the, I wouldn't call it a technique, but I make sure, especially if it's more than a day or a couple days, I make sure I have things along the way that I'm looking forward to. And actually, even in an afternoon. Yes, LA, you're going up into Griffith Park. You've read about the hike beforehand. Make sure that you go on the line, and you have a couple of things I'm looking forward to. There's this view, or I'm overlooking the Hollywood sign, and I'll get this great picture of me looking behind the Hollywood sign. Have things that you're really looking forward to. Equipment, first time around, I'd lean toward borrowing or renting, because you don't want to buy, because then you're stuck with it. And one other piece of advice, don't let other people buy your equipment. It's real personal choice, and then you tend to be stuck with it.
So I'll put in a plug. We hike ultralight now. We used to do what we call old school, where I'd be carrying like 35 pounds and he'd be carrying 55 pounds. And I could not do that now, and I could not do that and do the kind of mileage that we do now. That's his old backpack.
Yeah. So you saw the picture when we were married? Oh,
that was what he was wearing.
This was what he was wearing. And this pack here, sorry. This pack weighs as much, the pack weighs probably 5.5 pounds. Today, my pack, my sleeping bag, my pad, my stove, and my cooking gear. So probably close to over half, maybe 60%, weighs less than that pack does. There's new modern materials, and I'm not out there suffering. When I go out, my base weight is called no food, no water. My base weight is around 10 pounds.
Which is pretty light.
And I haven't spent a fortune. When you think about other sports, I guess we're on a soapbox right now. Other sports, whether it's I'm going to fly, I'm going to ski, I'm going to go boating.
That can be pretty
backpacking
expensive.
in the outdoors can really be inexpensive, and these things last. You saw that pack. I don't use it anymore, but that pack I used for a couple decades. And a good down sleeping bag. It's a little pricey to start with, but you buy quality, and it will last you 10, 20 years or more easily.
And it's not like we're trying to tell you how to do things. We're trying never to give advice, but it's something to consider, especially as you get older. If you want to do a through hike, you got to be able to do 20 miles a day, 6 days a week. Yeah. So
I hope that answers the question, and I hope you're walking away really enthused about getting out, whether it's a short distance or long distance. And those of you who haven't gone backpacking yet, I wish you a wonderful time on your first night.
Okay.
Awesome. Yeah, that was a really helpful answer. So we'll go ahead and end it there. Thank you everyone so much for tuning in. And again, thank you so much, Scout and Frodo, for this wonderful talk. Go ahead and purchase his book if you'd like by clicking that green button down at the bottom. But with that all said, so much, and I hope you all have a good night.
Thank you all. We had a good time with you.